Greetings to all. Today we are going to learn the new poem written by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. So this is a poem written by a great and eminent poet, Robert Lee Frost. Now we are going to learn about the author, about the poet of this poem. Robert Lee Frost was an American poet. He is highly regarded for his realistic depiction of rural life. A popular and often quoted poet, Frost was honored frequently during his lifetime. His work frequently employed themes from early 1900s rural life in New England. Let's move on to the next slide now. So before we start with the explanation of the poem, I would like you all to focus on these questions. What would you say is the most important decision you have made so far in your life? How did you make this decision? Looking back, was it a good decision or do you have regrets? See children, there are certain situations and circumstances in our life where we have to take certain decisions and we have to make certain choices, and it's very difficult because once we have made the decision, we cannot come back and retrace the path or travel on the same path again. It's very difficult to face those situations and circumstances. So here in this poem, we will talk about Robert Frost's dilemma. It's not only the poet's dilemma, it's related to our life also. We sometimes face certain situations. So before we make any decision, we must think twice. Now let's go through the poem, The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. Wood here refers to the forest. And sorry, I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Undergrowth here refers to the small bushes and shrubs. Then took the other, as just as fair, as just as beautiful. I'm going to explain you the poem in the next slides. But before that, let's go through it. Go through this beautiful poem written by Robert Frost. And having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, not shy. It is pronounced as sigh. Somewhere ages and ages long back, it means long back. Somewhere ages and ages hence from now onwards, two roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So this is a very beautiful poem written by Robert Frost. Let's go through it line by line and stanza-wise explanation. So before that, let me tell you about the road. Just now we have studied the road not taken. Before we start the poem or stanza-wise explanation of the poem, you must know that the poem is metaphorically written. It is a symbolic poem The complete poem is metaphorically written by Robert Frost. Now, you can see the word the road. The road in this poem is the symbol of choice made by us in life. As I told you, we have to face certain situations and circumstances in our life where we have to make certain decisions related to our life. And sometimes we find ourselves in dilemma. And it's very difficult for us to make any choice or take any decisions. Many times we regret the choice we make, but what is done once the decision is taken, we cannot come back and retrace the path. What is done once cannot be undone. Man regrets for what he has denied himself in life rather than what he has chosen. Hence, the poet has given his poem the title, The Road Not Taken. The word road not only means way, it also means journey or stage of journey that we have to follow in our life. And we should also be ready to bear the consequences once we have made the choice or taken the decision in our life. That is very important. We may come across many hurdles, many difficulties, but since once the decision is taken, we cannot come back and retrace the path again. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, as I told you, before we start with the poem, let's read the theme that underlies the poem. Robert Frost uses the natural setting in his poem, The Road Not Taken, in order to describe a situation in life. When we have to make a difficult decision, we don't know where to go. He uses the wood in the poem as a symbol of life. Wood actually means forest. That is a literal meaning. But then again, it has a different connotation as well. He has used this wood in the poem as a symbol of life, journey of life, a grassy and wanted via road as a better option that we have. And also the undergrowth, which is a symbol of an obstacle in life. As I told you, that once we make a choice and take certain decision for our life, we should be ready to bear the consequences, to face the result after the decision that is made by us. Let's start with the first stanza. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel through. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. So here Robert Frost says and describes a situation where he stood on the bifurcation of the road, on the fork of the road. And road, as I told you, symbolizes the choices that we make in our life, that we make in our journey of life. It's actually not the roads he's talking about on which we travel, but he's talking about the choices or the decision that we make in our life. So he says, two roads diverge in a yellow wood. Wood symbolizes forest, and it has turned yellow. The leaves have turned yellow. Why it has turned yellow? Because it was autumn season. And sorry, and being all alone there, the only traveler in that forest, without any touch with anyone, he says he could not travel, he could not take decision, he could not travel both the roads as he is all alone. So he stood there for a long time. Long I stood. This shows his dilemma, his confusion. Before taking any decision, we are at certain phase of our life that we get confused. And we take help of others, but there was no one to help. Robert Frost. And there are situations when we have to all alone take decisions of our life. And definitely it is going to decide the future, our future. So he stood there on the bifurcation of the road and looked down the first road he's standing. He looked down as he stood on the bifurcation. He looked down the first road, as far as he could, to where he could see that his vision is blocked. And why his vision is blocked? You can see this word over here, undergrowth. His vision was blocked because he could see undergrowth. Undergrowth means bushes and shrubs. And beyond that, his vision was blocked and he could not see. Means there are situations in our life beyond that. We cannot think of making any choice or taking any decision. We are in dilemma. We get confused. So let's move on to the next stanza. Here is a summary of the first stanza, children. So you will go through the summary of the first stanza given here. Now, the second stanza. As I told you, for a long time, Robert Frost stood on the bifurcation of the road, and once again, I would like to repeat that the whole poem is a symbolic poem. It is metaphorically explained. The road there stands for the choices, the decision, the journey of our life. So in the next stanza, what he decided, then took the other, then he looked down the other road, the second road. It was as beautiful as the first one, as just as fair. You can see he compares both the road. He compares the first road to that of the second. Compares the first choice to the second choice. Either he could travel the first path or the second one. But he has to travel only on one. He has to fix himself to one decision. So he compares both the choices, he compares both the roads. It was as beautiful, the second road was as beautiful as the first one. And having perhaps the better claim. And it presented, perhaps maybe, it presented a better claim, better opportunity. Because it was grassy and wanted wear. Because, and what reason he gives? What reason he gives for his claim for the second road? That it was grassy and it was wanted wear. Wanted wear means less damage, less traveled by the traveler. Though as for that, the passing there, this line shows his dilemma again. He says that, though as for that, the passing there on the same road, the second path is concerned, he could also see the first road less traveled, equally had warned them really about. If it is traveled, it is equally traveled by the traveler. If it is not, it is equally not traveled by the traveler. So though as for it, both the lines are quite tricky, need to understand. Though as for that, the passing, he talks about the passing from the road is concerned, he's confused because he could see that both the roads are equally damaged, had equally been damaged or traveled by the travelers. So this is the summary of the second stanza. So you will just go through it. Now moving on to the third stanza. What he describes in the third stanza about the choice that he has yet not taken. And he is in dilemma. And both that morning equally late. So what he decided that he's not going to take any decision. He would come back again the next morning and think of whether to travel the first road or the second. And both that morning, so once again, when he came back when he stood there on the bifurcation of the road, when he came back the next morning, what he found? He found that both the roads were equally lying in the same condition, And what was the condition? In leaves, no step had trodden black. Okay, no leaves had turned black because nobody, no traveler has traveled or walked upon that road. Both the roads were in the same condition. That again created a confusion for Robert Frost. Oh, I kept the first for another day. But then finally he has to take certain choice and take a decision and make a choice. So he said that he kept the first road for another day, yet knowing, even knowing that how way leads on to way, how one path will lead to another path. Once you have decided to travel on a path, on certain path, you cannot come back and retrace the path. If you think that you can come back, if you anticipate that in future that you can go back and you can retrace the path, you can start again, that is impossible. So think before you take any decision or make any choice. So I doubted if I should ever come back, and he says that he doubts if he should ever come back and retrace his path. So this is the summary of the third stanza given over here. You will go through the summary, my dear students. So let's move on to the fourth stanza now. What does he say? I shall be telling this with a sigh, not shy. There's a difference between SHY and SIGH. Okay? It means to take a heavy breath. It may be in excitement or when you are sad. So he says, I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, what he decided? That somewhere long ago, ages and ages means long ago, hence from now. So he talks about the past when he had decided to travel on the road and he decided to travel on the second path, even knowing that one way leads to another and he would not be able to retrace the path again. So he took a decision. He says, so he remembers that he decided ages and ages from now onwards to back. He goes he becomes nostalgic. Two roads diverge in a wood, that he stood on the junction of the road, and he took the one less traveled by, and this has made all the difference. And he decided to take a path which was less traveled by the traveler, and that has made all the difference. Now what difference is actually not mentioned here, whether it was positive or whether it was negative, but that has actually made a difference. Remember, my children, once you have taken a decision or made a choice, you have to bear the consequences of it. That's the reason I'm saying that think twice before making any decision, because that will definitely affect your future. Understood? So let's move on to the next slide. So summary of the fourth stanza is given over here. You please go through the summary of the fourth stanza. And moving on to the next stanza now. Now we are going to learn the message of this poem. What is the message hidden in this poem? Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, seems to hold out the motto that life is a continuous journey, full of divergence, full of difficulties, full of obstacles. And we have to be ready to face it now and then. Right now, we are undergoing critical situation. We are locked down. But we have to face the situation. Whatever may be the situation, we should be ready to face the situation. The important thing is to move on without looking back, whether the choice of paths taken was right or wrong. As I told you, there's no alternative for you. No choice left once you have decided to travel on the path. We cannot get everything in life and have to make choices. Whatever direction in our life takes is determined by the choice made by us. Remember, whatever decision we take, we have to be ready. And that will be our decision. And no more alternatives will be left if we have decided to travel the path, because one way leads to another. Will not be able to come back and retrace the path again. Now, as I told you that the entire poem is metaphorically explained and described. So here you have two words, yellow and woods. The yellow coloring of the woods is representative of light, hope and promise. Autumn season is followed by spring season. So, autumn awaiting spring. So, spring brings hope, Okay, and autumn is a representative of light, hope, and promise that the speaker is standing with. His future is bright and stretches before him. Though both paths are equally lit, he must choose only one. He has to take certain decision in his life. And sometimes we are helpless and we are hopeless too. Because there are certain situations and circumstances where we have to take all the decision and make our decisions on our own. Woods. The poem is set in the woods, that is in the forest, because we get an image of a quiet deserted place where the speaker is left alone to decide. There are no road signs or people to stop and ask for direction. There's no one to help him. He is all alone standing on the bifurcation of the road, and he has to make his own decision and choices. Next, we are going to learn few poetic devices. First is assonance. Assonance means repetition of vowel sound. As you can see in the first line, okay, two roads diverge in a yellow wood. Two roads, roads diverge in a yellow wood. So what is this? O sound is repeated. O, yellow, wood. So assonance. Assonance is a poetic device in which vowel sound is repeated. Now next is personification. Personification, you can see in the 8th line, because it was grassy and wanted beer. Humans can want, but not inanimate thing or animals. So personification is the giving of human characteristic to non-human, inanimate, non-living things. In this line, the path wanted beer. A path cannot want, humans can want. So that is personified, personification. Moving on to the next, metaphor. As I told you, the entire poem is metaphorically explained or expressed. The poem as a whole is a metaphor. What is this metaphor? It's an implied simile. Indirect comparison is made. Okay. Now here in this case, road symbolizes what? The journey of life, the choices that we make in our life. Okay. It's not simply the road that we travel upon. Fine. So it's a completely symbolic poem. Alliteration. Alliteration means the repetition of sound or the words. Wanted beer. WW letters are repeated. Wanted beer. You can just see over here. Wanted beer. WW is repeated. So alliteration. The next poetic device is personification. As we have all studied just now, that it means giving human traits or characteristic to non-living things or inanimate things or animals. So once again you can see the fork in the road, the divergence. Two roads diverge in a yellow wood. This is the first line in the poem. It refers to the life decision one has to make. Next is repetition. Repetition means the repetition of the words. How often it is repeated. Just see, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two words are repeated over there. Ages and ages. Okay. So this is your repetition. Ages and ages. You can see. This is repeated over here. Okay. So we have learned the poetic devices as well. Now I have given you few reference to context question over here. You can just see it for the first stanza and then again for the next stanza. Okay, so you have to write down all these questions in your copy. Okay, you have to complete all these questions in your English copy. Fine.